Well, hi everyone. Louise Schwartzwalter here with the Brain Soul Success Show. And this is a show where we actually learn, explore, and create your powerful, positive healing for life. And I am here with my guest, Rob Lohman. And Rob, you have such a rich history in the whole addiction world. And addiction and recovery and, like you say, incarceration, right?
Yeah.
All the work that you've done, and now you've been coaching and really helping a lot of people with your background and what you went through. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So so tell us a little bit about yourself, and what brought you to this place of now being able to really coach people on addiction.
Yeah. Well, my addiction world lasted from about 14 to 29 years old. So in the midst of all that, I mean, I saw a lot of darkness and came out of a lot of darkness. And when you look at kind of like the rap sheet of life, if you will, sometimes
Uh-huh.
as a connection point with some of your listeners and say, well, how can I connect to this guy? Well, addiction's pretty broad, but when you can throw things in there, and I always say my past does not just define who I am. It only helps me shape me into the person that I'm becoming, right? So when you can look at a rap sheet of like bankruptcy and divorce and suicide and addiction from substances and gambling and incarceration and coming out of all that to get to do what I do now and take my life story and share
Hmm.
that with others and the expertise I've grown over the years, it's really a blessing to kind of take the mess and just turn it into a blessing to help other people.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Wow. I used to say the best alcohol counselor is a former alcoholic. And
Yeah.
you're the epitome of that, right? In a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Gosh, but to when you say your whole rap sheet includes all those different kinds of addictions, what was the inner struggle that you think, you were working through at that time?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I didn't know this then, but when I
Mm-hmm.
can look back now, I lived my life as a chameleon from, childhood until I got clean, really, and just fitting in, blending in. But I stood out a lot because I was your class clown, I was your loud guy, but I was friends with everybody. But in the midst of that, I really did not know who I was,
Mm-hmm.
and the foundation of who I am really was just kind of like a ship in a huge storm out in the sea. I'm just bouncing around and waffling everywhere. So I was just lost internally
Mm-hmm.
until I was able to really kind of figure out who I am and whose I am. And that was a huge blessing. But in the middle of all that I just wanted to be loved and accepted and just wanted to fit in everywhere.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And if you even look back on that, if you look back on, hey, wanting to fit in, certainly there's a lot of people that will resonate with that, with that whole theme. Um, what kind of fell apart there? You
Wow,
know?
that's a great question. What fell apart? Well, interestingly, I mean, I grew up in a nice, wonderful Christian home. My parents loved to go to church. I had a really close relationships with my cousins and my aunts and my uncles, and so family wise, there was just a lot of love there. And I know when we moved to Texas in 1980, when I
Mhm.
was 9 years old, I think that's when a lot of my insecurities kind of started coming because I wasn't with my cousins and things all the time, and just going to Texas, complete different culture shock going down there. And I never ever really felt like I fit in Texas for
Mhm.
whatever reason. Even when I go back there now, it's just weird. I don't know what it is. Just I need to do some like EMDR or some of your brain work around like Texas in general. But
Okay,
because my
we'll clear Texas for you.
yeah, yeah. So we'll just clear it there and go in there. But it was just I don't know what it was, but over time it started becoming that I just wasn't like good enough.
Okay.
And I think that's why I drank so much. I mean, I started drinking at 14, but when I, went through high school, since I was like getting drunk before I went to swim practice, I was a really good swimmer, but alcohol was always there. And so I stopped swimming, and alcohol always took over potential every single time.
Mhm.
And now I'm gratefully, there is no alcohol or drugs in my life where potential is just unbounded. I mean, it's just, there's so much to do in my life now, but I think just not knowing really like who I was. I never understood what that meant to figure out like what's your core, what do you believe in?
Mhm. Mhm. It often does take something like a struggle or a big test or an addiction or something to kind of wake people up, for them to find themselves, right? To find themselves. I think about Deepak Chopra. He said addictions are a search for a spiritual path. Would you agree with
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I definitely would. I think without
Mhm.
a spiritual foundation, and that's why I love doing the coaching now, is I helping people find whatever that spiritual foundation thing is, or especially now we're in this COVID-19 world, right?
Mhm.
Where so many people have lost a job,
Sure.
which to them that was defined who they were, or
Mhm.
they have become divorced and their definition of who they were was, well, I'm a family man. Well, now my family's gone, or all these things that these external things that we can say define us, but
Mhm.
those are just roles that we play in our existence here on earth. When the core of who we are, when that's missing and just debunked, you said kind of get lost. Well, I feel like I got lost and I was found and I was lost and then I was found and there's kind of yin yang, but just keep bouncing back. I think is my friend. A lot of my friends call me like a rubber band. You
Mhm.
just keep bouncing back, no matter what the struggle is. I can always see a blessing in it because instead of saying things like, "Why did this happen to me?"
Sure.
I started saying like, okay, what's in it for me? What am I supposed to learn? What's the lesson here? Instead of
Mhm.
being a victim, kind of being more of a victor and just saying, okay, how am I going to grow from this?
Right, right. Well, that's beautiful because you've monitored that or figured out the self-talk piece that is necessary to make the change, right? It's about that inner questioning.
Yeah. And because I dealt a lot with suicide ideation in my life, but I didn't know that's what it was until a good friend of mine, Frank King, and I were having a conversation. He's this mental health comedian and he
Mm-hmm.
would talk about suicide ideation. I'm like, what the heck is that? I'm like, oh my gosh. Like before I got sober, about 6 months before I actually got sober in 2001, I dealt a lot with self-loathing and self-hatred because I didn't like who I was becoming. You know, I was
Mm-hmm.
gambling a lot. I was sleeping around a lot. You know, I was drinking, driving 8 nights a week. And it was just this crazy journey that I was on. But what would happen, and now that I understand this, so if people are listening and you've dealt with this, it doesn't mean you're weird or there's something wrong with you or anything like that. It was just,
Mm-hmm.
I literally would be driving down the highway, kind of like day after partying or whatever. But I would see my car veer off and actually hit a median and see myself blow up and die, like a lot. And it was
Uh-huh.
happening more and more because addiction's a progressive disease, and more and more and more, till
Mm-hmm.
one night when I was hanging out in a bar in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and then all of a sudden it was like music, girls everywhere. That's what I love to do. And then this is in 2001, and all of a sudden the bar got dead silent, and
Mm-hmm.
I audibly hear the words, "You're done." And then the bar got really loud again.
Wow.
And so, not knowing what was happening, I said to my buddy Sean, I'm like, man, I got to go home. I think I'm finally done drinking. He
Mm-hmm.
laughs because we drank all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I drove home that night, and it wasn't until recently I started saying this, but I felt like I was like sober, but I was drunk at the same time.
Interesting.
Like my mind was like, what is happening? But I was highly intoxicated because that's what, what we did most of that day. But I drove home to my little 1 bedroom apartment in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And this is the the darkness in my soul, the emptiness that was like really growing at this time. And I walked up, 12 flights of stairs up to my little 1 bedroom apartment, laid down on my workout bench in the middle of my living room. And I joke because like that's what every bachelor has, right?
Yes, yes.
Right.
Uh-huh.
To one of the most pivotal moments of my entire life, because I laid down on my workout bench and put about 350 pounds on the barbell and lifted the barbell off the rack, the little thing that holds the barbell, and just unhinged my elbows and dropped the weight across my chest was the plan.
Wow.
And in the midst of that, what I believe happened was God intervened and
Mhm.
he grabbed that bar and revealed himself to me in a very spiritual way through my dog, because my dog Jake started nudging my knee and looking at me like, what are you doing? And
Wow.
my first thought was, who's going to feed you tomorrow? And my heart broke for my dog, not for me, but for my dog. And then
Mhm.
I started thinking about my parents and my brother. And this is all milliseconds of time, because like
Sure.
I'm holding a weight that I cannot hold myself, but God was holding it for me. And then
Mm-hmm.
he put that bar back on the rack and I took my hands off. And it was probably the first time I had felt peace in a decade or more.
Wow. You
Yeah.
did have a defining moment.
Oh yeah.
That was powerful.
It was very powerful. And that night, I mean, I poured out all my alcohol. I had, expensive $60 bottles of scotch in my house, and I drank by myself for whatever reason. But that next morning I woke up and I felt completely different, like a completely different guy.
Mhm.
And I meant to call my aunt. She'd been sober 24 years, called my parents. My mom says I cried for an hour. She cried for an hour, and I just said, I need help. Like, I can't quit drinking and gambling. So my aunt picks me up, and we were going to a meeting, and she parks her car on the curb in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And we walk straight through the alleyway to the back of the bar to my first 12-step meeting of recovery. And I haven't had a craving or a desire to drink. I didn't go through detox at all. And I was up to like 2 bottles of scotch a day and drinking.
Oh.
But it was just a divine moment. So I'm in that small percentage, I believe, that just had this divine experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never seen a reason that alcohol or drugs would change anything in my life. Not that recovery has been easy by any means, but that was kind of my evening of divine appointment to get me into recovery.
Wow. You know what? So that just, you know what that says to me? That says that you've been connected to God your whole life.
Oh, I have. Yeah.
And that was that defining moment was, definitely, God holding your hand and saying, hey, you're supposed to do some greater things here on the planet, Rob. We got plans for you.
Yeah. And
Let's turn this around.
I told myself that a lot. I would say,
Mm-hmm.
I never begged God, like, please get me out of this situation. Cause I got in a lot of situations, but I just knew he was keeping me alive for a bigger purpose. And even though I've been sober 18 years, haven't had a drink or drug, gambling always stuck around.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we had a conversation before, we're talking about this process addictions. They always stuck around. So over time, and speaking to people, we have different seasons in our life, right? And a lot of people I'll coach and stuff for different seasons in their lives. So when I got sober, I was single. Then later, I ended up meeting my wife in 2006.
Okay.
I mean, there's like, hours of stories in between each of these, but
Mm-hmm.
met my wife in 06. So now I'm a husband,
Mm-hmm.
and then we had our first son. Now I'm a father,
Mm-hmm.
and I started a business, and now I'm a business owner, all in like my 5th and 6th year of sobriety. And over time, my recovery started slipping away because
Mm-hmm.
now my identity was in, I got to provide. Well, you're not providing enough. Well, you suck. You're a loser. You can't
Oh,
measure up.
okay.
Like, you've fallen behind. You're never going to catch up. Like, my faith was totally being overcome by fear.
Mm-hmm.
And my daughter was born in 2010. And then in 2011, I had a major nervous breakdown, or 2012 after losing my business in 2011. But I was back to this suicide ideation thing again.
Okay.
I was back to my identity was in external things again. I was back to self-loathing again. And that caused a lot of chaos in my journey from that point forward. But it was all because I was just lost again.
Right, right. Wow. Why do you think you had to go through that again?
I think because of the cool stuff I get to do now.
Okay.
I don't know. It's like God has a purpose. Like, he knows the end goal.
Mm-hmm.
He knows where he's taken people. And when I exercise a ton of my free will and just realize I can do it on my own,
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, but going through this is crazy because this is, year 11 of my recovery, right? Like, I should be rock solid, but not knowing how to handle the pressures of being a father and a business. When I lost my business in 2011, that's where a lot of my identity
Sure.
was in my business. And so I believe the journey I went through recently, or not recently, but back then, set me up for what I get to do now.
Of course. Wow. I love your view. You have such a great attitude and view of all of that, because the learning that's happened for you when I think about how you can help people now on the planet, with your skills and abilities and your passion for what you do. And wow. And because you suffered on many different levels, and it kind of came back in. So you had an opportunity.
Right.
You have had an opportunity to totally change that all up again. Well, how did
Yeah.
you get out of that one then? So let's find out that. Um,
well, the funny thing was, as we do this COVID-19 thing, and we're doing, talking and podcasting and stuff at home and stuff, we got our kids running around. There's certain parts of my story that's not totally revealed to my kids, and
Sure.
there's good reason for that too, because, children are at an age where they can, understand things like now that they couldn't then,
Sure.
and there's a lot of power and wisdom and just waiting to tell certain things. But in 2012, I ended up having a major mental breakdown in recovery.
Mhm.
So what you do in your brain work, it would have been great to know you back then.
Yeah, I would have cleared all that for you.
Yeah, clearing it and rewiring the brain and everything.
Mhm.
But in a moment of lack of clarity, one evening, I
Mhm.
just had a major mental blackout, and I reflect back on this now to like when I got sober, right? The
Mhm.
night before I got sober, like I wasn't thinking clearly. I was like on this autopilot thing, like kill yourself, take yourself out of the game,
Mhm.
all the self-loathing and all the messages, like those same messages I had then, I was
Mhm.
having now, but in a louder tone, in a
Okay.
sense, because now I had these responsibilities of being a father and a husband, and I felt like I had failed in a lot of those moments.
Mhm.
So in 2012, it was an evening of just kind of being up late, and family had gone to bed, and I was just reflecting on like kind of how like my brain was like on a major overload, major stimulus overload. And I was gambling so much, I was just completely a fear driven individual. Yeah. So
Mhm.
at this point, like I'm gambling a ton, fear driven individual, dealing with a lot of suicide ideation. And so this evening, everybody had gone to bed, and I was, unemployed, and all the messages are back in my head again. Right.
Mhm.
So I'm a late owl. I always have been, still am, but they went to bed and I was up looking for a side job and working on looking for an actual full-time job. And I just decided I'm just going to get up and clean my house, which was in complete disarray because we were remodeling our kitchen due to something else that had happened the year before. And all of a sudden, next thing I know, my patio's on fire.
Whoa.
And with, you know, minimal to no recollection of that exact moment happening, I couldn't stop it. And so I had to run upstairs and rip family out of bed. And we got out and nobody got hurt at all, just tons of property damage. But the
Mhm.
collateral damage of that moment, that evening, when again, we talk about what defines us. Well, I was being defined by my external life, which looked like not great.
Right.
Like I was a complete failure. No one was telling me I was a failure, but I told myself I was. And so
Mhm.
my whole brain, I guess, just melted that evening. And that led me to a long journey since 2012 to eventually getting arrested with 19 felonies, 13 misdemeanors, going to prison for 10 and a half months that could have been 56 years.
Wow.
And in the midst of all that, my amazing wife held everything together. She stayed with me through lots of prayer and just feeling like God said, hey, you're married, work
Mhm.
through this, because that's not the guy that you married. That's the guy that lost himself.
Mhm.
Like we were talking earlier, being lost.
Mhm.
But when I was gone, I secured who I am. I secured what my core is. What are my beliefs? And I'm never letting that go again, ever, no matter what's going on. So now, based on the journey of that,
Mhm.
capitalizing on 10 and a half months away, like I miss it sometimes because it's times of reflection, right? With no distractions.
Mhm.
And it was thankfully a minimum security place that I went to. But through all of that, and I came out and went through all the journey of probation and parole and successfully completing all those, I'm like, this is who I am.
Mhm.
I am Rob Lohman, a child of God, and that's my core. Everything else is a role I get to play in this life. And I get to be a husband. I get to be a father. I get to be a dog owner. Like, they're
Mhm.
privileges really. And so now I'm grateful for the journey in a lot of ways, because now through doing addictions with people with interventions and families and
Mhm.
recovery coaching and podcasting and
Mhm.
all the advocacy and things I get to do, I get to reach so many people with messages of hope versus selling software widgets.
Yes, yes. And messages of hope. That was just beautifully said because you exemplify that because of what you went through, and you can understand those feelings that people have when you're working with them on such a deep level because you were there. You can identify. What I'm thinking, that fire was definitely another little sign from God, huh?
Well,
You,
my son actually said once that my kids have said a couple things that have been cool over the years. My daughter said, Dad, if we never would have had the fire, we never would have been going to the school they get to go to now. And they love the school they're at now.
Mhm.
And, Dad, if the fire wouldn't happen, who knows who really knows where I would have gone mentally off the deep end. So that was the climax of my life right there in that moment. So I could either have looked at like, wow, man, look what you did. But I had to look at what's the blessing in this,
Mhm.
because going through the legal system and all that stuff, it was trusting God in the process, because it was out of my control.
Right.
Things that were on paper that said, this is what's going to happen to you, they didn't happen, but miracles happened along the way, which was just amazing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And to be able to look at it that way, you know what, then you have this resilience that and this the ability to handle stressors now, probably than better than a whole lot of people, and people are needing your wisdom right now and your coaching, given that, hey, we're on, lockdown with COVID-19 right now.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and so, how do we handle that? Well, because of everything you've been through, I think you probably have some seeds of wisdom there. So what would you tell the world right now, Rob, about, how can we handle feeling like we're, kind of trapped? It's kind of week 4 here, well, 5 for some, I think. I don't know. That's what I'm hearing from people. So I just want to know if you have any wisdom on this from your past. What can you pull out here?
Yeah, well, it's an amazing time to really reflect on what's important.
Mm-hmm.
I think even if it's journaling or doing something that just get your thoughts on paper to reflect on this time in history that hopefully we'll never ever ever have to relive. But now we can capitalize on more time with family.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's getting creative. Like, we have family dinners every night now because there's no sports.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So things are being eliminated, and it can be, again, the thing of, wow, I can't be with people, and it can be a sad thing, and watch all this news and all these things that can feed into the fear, or say, hey, you know what? I've got a little extra time today. I don't have to drive to the office, or even if I lost my job, it's like, what is the core of who you are? And we don't know that, I don't feel like, unless we can journal or find an outlet that says, wow, and we can look back on it years down the road and go, wow, I wrote that?
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. I mean, the stuff I wrote when I was incarcerated, it was like, I wrote that. I don't remember writing that at all, but it was just times of reflection. So I think just encouraging people to say, it's time to figure out who are you really? And
Mm-hmm.
if you don't know, reach out for help. I mean, this is a great
Right.
time to, even though we're doing a lot of this Zoom and stuff back and forth and things, but it's a connection point. And I know it's hard for a lot of people. I mean, they're in isolation, and it brings up a lot of anxiety and things that feel so real,
Mm-hmm.
but they can pass and be dealt with when you can kind of rewire your framework of your life.
Yes, we've been given an opportunity to do that. And you mentioned writing as one way to do that. What would be another thing, if you can look back on what you did to find your core, through recovery? What were some of those tools or things that you've used to find your core, find who you are?
Yeah. Seeking out mentors
Okay.
was a big thing of what I've done over my life, to just
Mm-hmm.
get a different perspective on how I'm thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and just be able to talk authentically, be vulnerable, being authentic. Our past is done. Like, it's in the past,
Sure.
right? We can't undo it, but we can kind of redo how we look at our past and go forward. So, but yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of journaling. I love finding things I love music is a great outlet for me, and that causes me to just think. So I think being more present with today instead of being so distracted on what I want to get done, because I'm a passionate entrepreneur. I like to create
Mm-hmm.
systems, create programs, create these things, and I can get caught up in that sometimes. And I'm like, man, I need to go to bed. It's like 2:00 in the morning, but I'm excited about things. And so it's just realizing that, my family is the most important thing to me. And I don't always act that way. I'd say sometimes, when we're so busy with life. So this has given me a chance to slow down. Again, music, reading, writing, physical exercise is huge. I got my little gym in the garage now, which is great. Just sweating it out, man, getting some of that frustration out, because I don't know. I mean, it's just getting creative with in our houses right now.
Yeah, it sure is. It sure is. I love it. You got the garage gym. Yay!
Yay, it's good
That's
stuff. Well, I have rebuilt. I love to build. I guess building is another outlet for me, creating
Building.
things with my hands.
Okay,
So
cool.
I've literally built shelves, not during this time, but over the last year or two, just around my entire garage where it's so efficient. It's awesome. And I love to look at it. I'm like, you know what? I built that. I
Yeah.
take some pride in that. It's kind of fun to create things.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Great idea. Love it. Create and build. Yeah.
Yep.
My son just built a bench out of his old snowboards.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's
That'd
pretty
be neat.
cool. Yeah, it's really pretty cool. Yeah. And he was like, I felt so accomplished, Mom. I did it, I did
Yeah.
it. So yeah, and he was in the wood, worked out perfectly. I only had like 4 inches left. It was like amazing. So, you know, so yeah, so building, that's great. Well, you certainly have had, quite a journey. When you say mentors, who have been some of your mentors?
Oh, wow. Buddy of mine, Jeff Cromendike, has been a great mentor just from a fatherly perspective too, because, he has older boys and I have a 12-year-old son and he's maturing and growing. And so we talk a lot about that. We've talked through so many just marital struggles as a result of pre and post fire, I guess you could say, that my
Mm-hmm.
wife and I have worked through and seen God show up in so many amazing ways. Don McCreevy, amazing guy, amazing pastor here. After the fire happened, the church that we went to here locally gave us, a couple checks to
Mm-hmm.
help us out financially.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't cash them because it was under false pretenses, right? But I remember when I went back in that with my wife and we went back to Don and said, hey, we just can't accept these because here's the real story. And Don said, okay, I'll see you every week. And he just started discipling me every week out of the kindness of his heart. And he still is a great mentor of mine. And that was from 2012. So it's been the last 8 years that Don's been amazing. My dad's just a great inspiration for me. He wasn't always around emotionally when I was a kid,
Mm-hmm.
but as we got older, he he just really breathed life into me and just shows me really what, along with my mom, but from a fatherly perspective, what unconditional love really looks like. My parents are incredible. So yeah, I mean, Don, Jeff, Chad Brugman, Gary Brugman, um, my son's a real inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
When he actually knows kind of the whole story.
Okay. Wow, your
Um,
kids are probably so wise, so brilliant. I
yeah,
just,
they are. They're
yeah,
pretty amazing. They
yeah.
inspire me every day. Yeah.
Mhm. Wow, that's you have a lot of angels in your life.
Yeah. Thank goodness. Like I
Yeah,
said, I mean, you said God was always there my whole life.
yeah,
But there'd been, I mean, my wife and I will eventually write a book about kind of blessings that have happened through all this.
yeah, because her perspective is also very valuable.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and I'm sure you use that or in speaking about your journey when you're helping people with coaching them through these difficult times. Yeah, for them if they're on that same kind of path. Yeah, what a beautiful gift. You have a beautiful way of speaking. You know what? I feel like I'm a little bit of an empath here, and I
Mm.
and I think that you came out with God like Jesus was on your right shoulder.
Oh yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a cool marriage success story here. Do we have time to talk about this cool marriage story?
Yeah, yeah, we love the marriage story. Yes.
So when you get into all the details of everything, you're like, man, how are you guys still together?
Yeah, of course. That's the
you know,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
and we went through last year, we went through a 4.5 month um, ministry program that was really about unpacking your entire life, marriage. People are on kind of like the brink of, just disaster, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was one of those things like we had to do something different because there was a lot of just anger, resentments, all these things on both sides, just from like before the mental breakdown to now that we just hadn't worked through.
Mm-hmm.
And so we spent 4.5 months with this amazing couple that had been through their own stuff. And it was 2 hours every 2 weeks individually. We never met together. And what they forced us to do was look at our side of the street. Because as couples, we can blame the other person very easily. As
Sure.
humans, we can blame the other people. Oh, it's your fault I did this. Like, well, actually, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
Your responsibility is you responded this way. No matter what they did, you responded in this manner. So we went through this and had a 2-day intensive at the end of all this. Just literally, they had us start from the day we met
Mm-hmm.
and go through our entire life together. But we couldn't move forward if we got to a bump until we did a true biblical confession and biblical forgiveness with each other. And it
Nice.
was it was so powerful. But what we learned
Mhm.
and my wife would attest to this also, is that we created false narratives about each other from the beginning of our marriage that were not outspoken. So therefore we created a story in our head like, oh, well, you did that, you don't love me, or you said that, you don't respect me. And it was just years of that we didn't know that we did that to each other until we went through this program, which completely freed us up. And then check this out. After we went through it all, we were done. One of my wife's mentors reached out to her and said, hey, Jen, we were, Chris and I were going to go on this marriage cruise, this family life marriage cruise, but we can't go now for various reasons. And we were going to sell it, but then we feel like God said, just give it to somebody. Just bless somebody. So they called my wife and said, hey, do you guys want to go on a free, like a family marriage life cruise? So a couple months after we finished this, we got to go on this family life marriage cruise, an 8-day cruise, and just work on our marriage with 2,100 other couples that were on this cruise to work on their marriages. And, it just shows that doing the hard work, you don't know when the payoff's coming, but it's there. And so no matter what the heck people are going through, it's just never losing hope and just saying, you know what, I have to own 100% of my part in this relationship and my addiction. I got to own 100% of it. It doesn't matter. Like, we drink because we have pain, a lot of people,
right?
And we don't know how to deal with it. So it's just the beauty of staying in the fight and not giving up. And so many couples easily could have just been like, boop, I'm out, I'm done.
Sure.
That's the easy way, but man, it's hard work. And now with this COVID thing, we get to spend a lot more time together.
Right.
We play a lot more Yahtzee. That's like our intimate time together, is we play a lot of Yahtzee together and have fun. And we like board games, but it's looking at it and saying, I should be dead 1,000 times over with the stuff I did, but I'm not. And I don't deal with suicide ideation anymore. I actually beat gambling 16 months ago through Celebrate Recovery program I went through. And I didn't know I needed to work on it until I knew I needed to work on it. But I don't have those anxieties anymore. So I'm pretty chill, low key. Of course, my family's in here. They might laugh a little bit and say, well, not all the time, but pretty much I am, because I don't have time to deal with all the nonsense of life and feed into all this fear-driven tactics that the media throws our way.
Right. Well, you've got a higher spiritual calling and a deep faith that came from the struggle.
Yeah.
That came from the struggle. Like I said, I think you were born with, God right there next to you, but you certainly have a lot of angels around you, and you've done your work. And what a good message about doing the work. It is about doing the work. I take people through my brain system, and it's work. It's a year-long program, and we're digging, and we're clearing energy even ancestrally, and we're having to look at our I was going to say shit. Look at our stuff.
Yeah.
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 And yet coming up on the other side of that, people's lives have been transformed. And that's what you've done with your journey, and now getting to help people. Oh my gosh, it's just so amazing. Because you know what? I don't know anybody, Rob, who's been through as much sort of wake up calls, I'm going to say, and yet was so aligned with God. So your story is incredibly impactful, and the story too of you working with your wife and everything you've done too on that. So I know you're on that self-growth personal journey. You're never going to stop now.
Nope, not at all. I got lots of projects I'm working on to just help people and encourage people, and I'm excited about what the future holds every day.
Yeah. So tell us about what's the project that you're working on right now?
So one of them's really cool. It's called the Art of Intervention Project. And as an interventionist, I love working with families, helping families, but there's so much wisdom out there for people that have been doing this for 30, 20, plus years. So I've been spending a lot of time actually interviewing a lot of these interventionists around the country. And I'm putting together a resource for families and professionals to just say, okay, here's all these different ways to help a loved one. What's the common theme? But then how do you actually find a good interventionist? And personalities matter, and their processes matter. So at the end of it all, hopefully this will be all wrapped up by the end of June, but it's a lot of work, and it will be a multimedia resource from videos to podcasts to, actual written, textbook that people can use. And I'm excited for the Art of Intervention project to be done, because it's, thousands of hours of work,
Yes.
and it's just gonna be cool when it comes out to help people. So that's one I get excited about. The other one is I love my Beyond the Bars radio podcast, which for people listening now, you were just on recently,
Yes.
and your story's out there, which I loved interviewing you. But Beyond the Bars radio podcast, I put 2 of them out a week, and it's just great to share all this experience, strength, and hope that professionals have around the country, around the world, and people's testimonies and their stories. It all just brings encouragement and hope to people.
Mhm.
And so that's really cool. And, there's people looking at the show now because it's gotten so big, to be sponsors of the show, which I'm excited about, and always wanting to partner with strategic people to
Mhm.
do that too. And so, people are listening like, hey, I want to check that out. It's a unique way to get the word out about what you do in a pretty cool way. So those are probably 2 of the, I mean, there's so many. I mean, I'm working on another book right now called, well, I won't reveal the topic of it, and the topic is the story, but it's all about finding your faith and through fire. And it's going to be really neat when that comes out. It's probably months down the road, but there's you and I could probably
Yeah,
spend
that's
all day building
great.
stuff and
Oh, I
coaching.
love it. I
Yeah.
love it. I just love your inspiration. I love your work. I love what you're doing in the world. If you were going to leave, our audience today with one tip, one tip, whether it's for recovery or for self-growth, for maybe managing through COVID-19, what would you offer us? What would you say would be a good step to take?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's great. One thing, as we were talking kind of before leading up to the show, is I
Mhm.
wanted to kind of give a takeaway to your listeners too, because I value your show. I'm enjoying it, enjoying what you do, and you're just doing such great work. So one thing I just want to throw out there too, especially during the COVID world, is that if people want a couple free sessions of coaching to just process through what the heck's going on in their life, to just figure out, what do I want to do, what direction do I want to go, I want to throw that out to your listeners too, that I'm just want to offer them 2 kind of free consultations to just talk through whatever is going on. And if they just email me, I'm sure you'll have my contact info out there, but they can just call me too at 970-331-4469. But I want to offer a couple complimentary sessions to your listeners. Um, and I just think that's something to give back to people that have lost a lot
Mhm.
in their journey. And I just want to just encourage people to keep pressing on. Like, don't ever quit. Don't ever give up. There's so much hope that's in front of you right now. And as a community of people, as a community of your listeners and my listeners and everyone, like, if we just love each other better,
Yes.
I mean, do we just love each other better? And I mean, I went running last week and I was jogging and the person was on the other side of the street, whatever. And they were looking my direction. I was like waving to them, and they looked right at me, and it was an intentional, just kind of like, oh, I can't talk to somebody right now, 'cause I don't know. Look people in the eye, love people, keep our chins up, be a community of people, and just love each other better.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. And thank you so much for that amazing gift. If you have an opportunity here to talk with Rob, you are just going to be so blessed, because the wisdom and your insights, and everything that you've been able to help people with has just been such a gift. And I love that you're giving back. That you're
Yeah.
giving back to the world right now. You're right. It's about loving each other more. I kind of want to have a giant orgy at the end of all this. I don't know
There you
why.
go.
I
Is
mean,
it-
not I just want to touch people, see people. Let's in a healthy way. I mean, a
yeah.
healthy. That's how I'm meaning that word orgy there.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Like, just a community loving each other really well.
yeah,
Yeah. That's
just one big love. One big love theme here. So yeah, yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, thank you so much for being here, Rob. This has been just a gift to spend time with you and learn about your journey and your story, and how you transformed through that. People learn through people's stories. That's what I love about conversation. So,
yeah. It's
so
it's powerful. And one thing too, I just want to, like, I did give my number out, and I mean for people to use it. And you can
okay.
text me if you don't want to talk, because there was
Okay.
a guy, I was in an event once, and there was a guy that said, "Wait a minute, are you this guy?" And he showed me my phone, or his phone, and had my phone number. He's like, "I heard you on a radio show like 6 months ago, or whatever the time frame was, and you said call me, and I was afraid to call you because I didn't think you meant it." Well, I mean it. People can call anytime to reach out for some help. But yeah, thank you.
Oh, great. Great story. Leave that phone number again. What's that phone number again?
970-331-4469.
All right. Give Rob a call, everyone, and have a powerful, positive day. Thank you for being here, Rob. This has been such a gift.